Bobby! Bobby!
When they get to a point in the river where they realize that they're back by this rusted wreck of a car.
We made it! We made it, Ed!
Which to them means civilization, they're back. And what is civilization represented by? This old wreck of a car. And that's the kind of irony there. And then, of course, the dam is being built and it's already being flooded. Water's already backing up. And there's a village that's going to be flooded, and the wooden church is being moved out.
We may have to stop just a minute for the church to get out of the way.
You know, you always think of a church as being something very solid, belonging to one place, and then you see it on the move, and you get the sense that nothing can be relied upon. So that church, which is moving through a street, is like their beliefs, if you like, which have now become uprooted and uncertain. For me, all those scenes that follow after they escape from the river were the most interesting scenes in the film. And most of those scenes, for instance, in the hospital, when they go into the little dining room, which is one of, I think, my favorite scene in the whole film.
Oh, hello. Come on in.
When Ned Beatty's already there in this very typical thing that you have in Georgia where everybody sits at one table in a restaurant or in a boarding house and the meal is served. It's like a family thing. And Voight comes in and there's this a kind of quiet sympathy for him and he weeps.
And he breaks down because it's so moving to him that people are treating him kindly. And I think that's the truth of people who come back from war. That they can't believe that they've returned, that things are going to be all right, you know, that love is there for them.
Goodbye, Ed.
Bye, Bobby.
I don't think I'll see you for a while.
I needed an image to express the sense that this was a nightmare that was going to haunt these men, particularly the Jon Voight character, always. The fear that the body might be found. It was a nightmare, and it had to be expressed in some way. And so this hand rises from the river, and Voight wakes up.
No!
It's his nightmare.
It's the idea that they can never really rest in peace, that nightmare will always be threatening. They will never be able to put this experience to rest. And I think, you know, I think it's a good note to end the film on.
I got this guy who was a very good diver who did the stunt for Jon Voight to go under the water and put just a rubber glove on. I want to show the idea of a hand would be swollen from the water. And so we just put this rubber glove on him and he went under and he brought his hand up. That's how we did it.
When I first saw it, I thought, man, I don't know about that. And then when I saw it with an audience and the audible gasp was sensational.
You know, I started as an editor myself. And so we cut the picture as we went along. And 3 days, actually, after I'd finished shooting, we had a cut. So within a week of finishing shooting, the studio was watching the film. Well, I first of all had to deal with the whole censorship problem. You know, I think often violence on film is, I think, dishonest when, you know, bang, there's a shot fired and he falls out of shot, and that's it. And so the killing of this man, I elongated it. It took him a long time to die. And it was something that the censors tried to cut, and I had long arguments with the censor about that issue. And my point was that it was vital that these men, these characters, should be obliged to see the consequences of their actions. And we fought it, and the studio backed me up, and eventually I took out from the death scene 6 frames, which is 1/4 of a second. It was the only cut that I made.
We thought that we were doing an interesting movie. But, we were a little bit scared about the rape scene and, how the people are going to accept it and all that. So we didn't think that it was going to be that successful, the way it became.
Well, then the picture opened, and it got quite an adverse reaction to the violence, and particularly to the rape scene. But the reviews were generally good, and it was a huge success. I met someone just a couple of years ago who said to me, I saw that film of yours, Deliverance, when it came out. He said, I walked out halfway through, and I've never been back to the cinema since. So I think a lot of people were put off by it.
The first thing I noticed about people's reaction to it was that women seemed to know exactly what it was about. And guys would say, yeah, I know, canoes, I know about that. And bow and arrow, I did that, yeah.
I don't think Boorman and I don't think my father were interested in having people walk out of the movie feeling good. They wanted people to walk out of that movie feeling like they had been run through a ringer. And you can't forget Deliverance because you can't write it off emotionally or psychologically.
Don't ever do nothing like this again. Don't come back up here.
Jim Dickey would haunt the cinemas when it was being shown, and he would walk along the lines. People were saying, you're going to get your money's worth today, boy. I'm telling you here, this is one great movie, But unfortunately, as the years went by recently, all the conflicts that we had originally about the script resurfaced and wanted to remake the film.
That was during a period in his professional life when he was not as productive and creative as he had been before, and I think it was sort of a passing project. I think ultimately he was probably happy with the movie as it was.
Yes, I was nominated as producer and as director, and Tom Priestley for the editing, and it was a very strong year. It was Godfather, Cabaret. I think there were probably 5 films nominated as Best Picture that year that could have won in any time in the last 10 years. When you make very successful film of this nature, it has a quality of bonding you together with the people who made it, particularly when you've been through something like this was. The making of this was rather like being to war, So I've remained friends with all those 4 actors and Vilmos Zsigmond and seen them all from time to time over those years.
While we've all gone through our different adventures in life, and we've changed and certainly gotten older, still there's the same characters, the same boys that made the film back there are still alive,
It was really a life-changing thing. I mean, it it opened doors that I didn't even know existed before that.
Burt Reynolds looked at me one day and said, "You're really good in this." I said, "What?" He said, "You're really, really good in this." I said, "Oh, thank you, Burt." He said, "No, thank you, Burt." He said, "You're gonna do films." I said, "Sure." But God bless him, Burt did an awful lot to help me have that film career.
So the film was filled with these extraordinary moments of my life that I'll never forget. Not only was it my deliverance out of television and certainly some bad movies, but into another area that I'd never been in.
But without John, I swear to you, this movie would have been half as effective. I mean, he was 100% over the top. It's just his energy, the way he works. It's God's gift to John,
In the 70s, the studios depended on directors and gave them an enormous amount of power. When I made Deliverance, there was no notes from the studio. We didn't preview it. There were no sneak previews. There were no audience cards and things. And today, this kind of film would be made in a much different way. But the 70s were a period of originality and daring, and we were free from censorship very largely for the first time. That's something that often is not taken into account. There were all sorts of possibilities available to us that hadn't been before.
If you stuck a gun to my head, I couldn't think of another story except some that shouldn't be told.